let's dig into the topic du jour, of course, which is Jocks and Jills. Now, I mentioned you and Tessa launched this last year, and like you guys have had the who's who of women's hockey on there. I mean, go down the list: Cassie Campbell, Pascal, Cami Granado. Some would say she's the greatest of all time. So many people. You've just launched as we record this. Season 2, episode 2, Blair Turnbull is on the show, so you got all the big stars on. I loved the episode you did last season with Emrys Mashmeyer too. Like, it's a great show. Before we talk about obviously linking up permanently with the PWHL, how did the show come about? Like, because you and Tessa like have a great chemistry. The show's really entertaining and informative, but it's also fun to hear with the guests on there. Like, how'd you guys come up with the idea? Where did it all start?
Thank you. First of all, I appreciate that. It came from like the PWHL starting and us just wanting to be more involved. Like, we do international women's hockey coverage at TSN. That's how Tess and I got really close, covering the Women's World Championships together. We did our first tournament together in Calgary in 2021. And we were so excited about the inception of this new league. But like, I don't know, there's the whole chicken and the egg thing in media, right? Like, you got to cover it you got to cover games for them to grow and be more successful. But games also need to be successful and good for media to show up and cover it. So TSN was playing and this is in that Athletic article that we did with Haley. Like, TSN was playing the games, but they weren't producing the broadcasts. And Tessa and I were like busy, and she was hosting Sports Center, and I do all my junior coverage, and I'm kind of busy with my day-to-day Bardown thing. And we wanted to do more in terms of covering the actual league itself. And there just wasn't a whole lot of room to do that. So we were like, screw it. We're going to just do it ourselves. We're going to have a podcast. And like, Tessa called me and she was like, I have an idea. And I was like, a podcast? And she was like, yeah, podcast. And I was like, oh, revolutionary. We're going to do a podcast. Everybody and their dad's got a podcast.
Yeah.
But the more we looked at it, I was like, you know what? No one's really doing a women's hockey podcast consistently, because there has been, I've been really careful in talking about that, because there has been like Noxie, Noxie and Karel Emard did a podcast a couple years ago on the Steve Dangle podcast network that was so good, but obviously they're both so busy working with the PA, and Cax is an agent, so it's hard for them to do that all the time. There's been lots of great podcasts. I think the Too Many Men podcast is a little bit of women's hockey coverage too, in addition to their NHL coverage. There's lots of that. Like, Jeff Merrick's new show, I'm sure, is going to do NHL, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of junior involved there, because Jeff is the junior guru, and some PWHL too, because he has lots of connections there. But there wasn't really anything in the space that was consistent, that was like really laid back and funny, that felt like having a beer with your friends, which is, Tess and I are lucky because we both kind of approach sports coverage in that way. Like, Tessa and I, like, neither one of us have ever been like that backup serious, really news anchor type of on-air talent. So yeah, we just had a similar philosophy. And then we're like, okay, let's make this work. And we didn't really know what that meant when we started to do it. Like, we wanted it to be good. So we have connections with different brands, and we tried to like work different brands to do sponsorships with us. Like, we got Red Bull to throw us a launch party. And then we're like, okay, we have a podcast now. And then I was like, oh my God, we do this every week. So there was some crazy times of like, we were on opposite schedules. I was working kind of 9 to 5, and then additionally had games at night with 2, but mostly my job happened during the day with the like exception of games here and there. But Tessa's shift was mostly like 6 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and she was also driving an hour from Milton. So there was like honestly an hour a week where Tessa and I could catch one another and film the podcast. And sometimes it'd be like after Sports Center, I'd be like, oh, Tessa, it's fine, I'll just wait up, and we'd film it at 3 o'clock in the morning or something stupid like that. Like, but we just wanted to make it work. So it came from like a little bit of resistance that we're just not seeing the kind of coverage that we would consume covering the PWHL. We're just not seeing it. So we just wanted to provide that. And yeah, that's kind of how it started.